volunteering to bring back the best source of Soviet intelligence you've got at a time where Russia and America are on the brink of nuclear war.
Your versatility really shines through in this, because this character has this confidence where he never skips a beat, but he's also a complete fish out of water.
Can't believe I'm actually having lunch with spies.
What were the challenges of balancing that, and was it difficult?
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you to say, and it's something I was kind of acutely aware of having to craft throughout the whole film and really track, because obviously shooting out a sequence like most movies, he goes from being a naive who's sort of slightly dismissive of even the idea, to being someone who's fairly professional at spycraft and his job, to being a sort of all-out hero trying to save his friend, however ill-advisedly or tragically.
He would never leave me to die, and I'm not leaving him.
Yeah, it's so important, because to me, that was what was sort of attractive about the role, that and the fact that he starts as an everyman, someone from a very humble Welsh background.
What does this do? Shoot poison darts?
Quite far away in his ordinariness from some of the extraordinary characters I played before, and to see that transition, to make that really work was key to me, and also to bring the audience in, to make them feel that they were questioning whether they could have gone through what he went through, and I mean, although it's soft spying in the sense that, we're not talking about hypersurveillance or James Bond antics, it's still punishable by death. I mean, it's a terrifying thing to think of what would have happened to him had he been caught.
What if I get caught? Then execute me, correct?
It's a really important aspect of the character as drawn in the script, but also as how I wanted to play him. So thank you for asking that question.
I was wondering about the Wynn character, because he's a really complicated character. To play both sides of that, I mean, Cumberbatch was on fire. Was that a scary idea, trying to cast the right person for that role?
You know what? I was only halfway through it, and I thought he's got to do it. We'd worked together a few times before. I knew him really well. I was desperate to work with him again. And some actors do have, Rachel Brosnahan's another actor who has a sort of innate feel of how to put themselves into a specific historical period, but be truthful. Because it's very easy, if you're playing sort of uptight British, to go into a sort of weird, sort of caricature. But I knew with Benedict that he could get that, but also find this sort of vulnerable human being in the middle of it, who, as you say, is a sort of rookie. I mean, he didn't know what the hell he was doing.
I don't understand why. I'm just a salesman.
And the stakes are incredibly high, So he sort of managed, I think, to get that sort of formal sort of restraint that especially guys at that time in Britain had, and play the sort of innocence. And he sort of has a storyteller's instincts about that, which is really helpful,
I'm just a salesman.
Exactly. Your civilians, the KGB won't be watching.
In the latter half of the film, you have some scenes where you look pretty emaciated. Your physicality changes significantly. Did you lose weight for that role? Starve yourself to get into character? And how do you balance that with the fact that soon you would have to film as a bona fide superhero?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard both ends of the scale, obviously, but it's very hard. It took me a long time to put the weight back on. I did the Mauritanian a while after, but I still look incredibly thin in that film, I think. As opposed to my normal sort of body weight. But, I helped to augment this process with Dominic by producing it. But I think even if we hadn't produced it as a company as Sunny March, Dominic and I would have really, really, really driven for the hiatus we had in order for me to be able to lose the weight. It was imperative to me. I lost about a stone and a half, and it was through the usual methods of dieting, but also some extreme exercise. I was very fit. It was all done in a very healthy way. It wasn't about atrophy or lethargy. It was very much about trying to shred everything to shrink wrap my body mass around muscle. But when you do start to feel slightly kind of, I can't remember what the word is, it's horrible, but it basically is a description for self-digestion. You have to also just strip away muscle, and that's a very nasty thing to be doing. And you get very disorientated, you feel dehydrated, you feel hungry all the time, you feel emotionally and physically very vulnerable, all of which plays very helpfully into a character that must have endured this for months, if not years. And so you look at those photographs and you think it may only be 4 scenes of a film, but I have no choice but to honor the truth of what he endured for a far longer period of his life, and just go there and just get on and do it. And it needs that. We need to be honest about what the risk was that was run and taken and received. You know, he just lost 2 weeks of his life to a mental breakdown, and I think a long time, a lot of strain physically and emotionally after that. It really took its toll on him. So yeah, it was the least I could do to try and honor that.
It feels like there would be so many complications navigating a film like this, juggling the history and the secrets being kept between individual characters, but you managed to make it shockingly cohesive. What were some of the challenges you faced taking on a true story?
Wow. Well, I suppose, I mean, with any true story, you've got to sort of honor the spirit of it, but not the letter, because you've got to compress a whole sort of 3-year period into 2 hours. And so there's a tightrope to be walked if you're doing that, because there is a responsibility. And any period thing takes sort of a bit of extra work, because you've just got to find a credible world for it. And I think, you know, it's no good sort of just dropping contemporary characters, contemporary sort of behavior into a period setting. You have to sort of get the actors to completely embody that. And I mean, people were really different back then. They behaved really differently.
Speaking of the period itself, I kept thinking about, like, as a person with a passion for shooting, how much fun that would have been at times, you know, because of the era and the locations. Like, there was a particular shot with the wild elevators that keep moving, and I was just like, how much fun would this be to shoot? Was that just a delight, given on the
Yeah, the elevators were fabulous. We had, yeah, I mean, listen, it's pressure. You know, there's a huge amount of pressure in shooting just because of the time you have. And when you're shooting on location and you're in one place for a day, you know, you've got to get it done. And there were a lot of sort of, in this movie, there was a lot of stuff that was shot, you know, in multiple locations. So we had to sort of deliver. So that sort of takes the fun out of it. But we did in Prague, in particular, which stands in for Moscow. We had some fantastic settings and brilliant sort of extraordinary locations. There were some trying bits as well. It was mightily cold, and we did quite a lot of night shoots, which are tough. But no, there was a joy. I mean, some of the sort of eccentric 60s settings were brilliant, and Prague had some wonderful sort of Soviet style architecture, which we used and really enjoyed.
Maybe we're only 2 people, but this is how things change.